Hey guys, what is happening? My name is Mary Breitenbach and welcome to the first video in our 4-part harmony tutorial series, where my hope is to provide insight to enable you to write simple 4-part cadences all the way to more complex chord progressions, cadential 6/4s, passing 6/4s, first inversion, second inversion, you name it, all in the name of good fun. So bear with us, it's going to be a long journey, it's going to be a long video series. I hope to have more content out every week. But yeah, please, if you have any comments, don't forget to leave them in the description down below. If you enjoyed this video tutorial, please don't forget to like, maybe consider subscribing, as it really does help us. And yeah, let's get straight into it. There are 3 pre-elements that you guys should really know before tackling 4-part harmony. The first one is key signatures. I can't stress this enough. You need to know your key signatures, all 7 keys, major, minor, sharps, flats. You know, if someone asks you what is the key signature of E flat major, you need to know it's 3 flats. Click of a finger. So that is my first suggestion for a pre-element. The second one would be intervals. You really need to know the relationship between any 2 given notes at any given time. Extremely important. And the third one would be triads. Now we are going to jump straight into that now because we need to learn figuring. But triads are essential. So yeah, please, those are the 3 pre-elements that you should really get in touch with before tackling 4-part harmony. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to get into is triads of a major key, not a minor key. We'll be dealing with minor keys in a later video. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we are in C major currently. If we plug in the triads of C major for each degree, this is what we're going to get. Sorry, I'm using Sibelius, so bear with me if I'm a little bit slow. So for our first triad, being the tonic, our notes are going to be C, E, and G. Okay. For our second triad, starting on the degree of D, being 2 of C major, D, F, A. Now don't worry, we're going to figure these after we've gotten all the triads down. I'm literally doing this step by step for beginners so that you guys see exactly what goes into the fundamentals of 4-part harmony. Our third triad, starting on degree 3, is obviously E, G, and B. Our fourth one, F, A, C. And I'm just going to drop down the octave to G. For chord 5, or the dominant, or chord 6. Whoops, sorry. Oh, that was a nasty sound. Alright, that's on A, and then finally the leading notes, D, D, F. Okay, so what we have now is the 7 triads of a major key, and in this case the major key is C major. So when figuring triads, we should always make sure that we understand what is major and what is minor. So the first triad being the tonic, C, E, G, that is chord 1, and we write it as a capital 1. Now, ideally, this would be in Roman numerals. I apologize for the font of Sibelius. I'm not sure how to change that, but oh well. Okay, chord 2 is a minor chord, and we write it in lowercase. Why is it minor? Because of the notes, D, F, A. Okay, because we don't have an F sharp in there, major triad of D major, it is now considered minor. Chord 3 is also minor for the exact same reason. E major would have E, G sharp, B, but because it does not have a G sharp, because we're in the key of C major, is a minor triad. Got that lowered third. So we write the 3 as lowercase. Chord 4, F, A, C. This is now a major triad, so we write that as a capital 4. Chord 5. For the dominant, we write that as a capital 5. chord 6, ACE. This is another minor triad. Why? Because of the C sharp. It is not there. It is just a C natural. If it was A major, we would have A, C sharp, E. But in this case, because we're in the key of C major, we've got a C natural. And so ACE is a minor triad. I am a little bit slow with Sibelius, so please just bear with me on that. Okay, we write that as a minor triad, and then chord 7 being the leading note. Can anyone guess what this is? This is a diminished triad. Oops. And I'm just going to write dim there. I don't know if it's going to change. No, it didn't. But anyway, it should be a little circle, but I've just written dim there. Like I said, I'm not entirely clued up with Sibelius, but no worries. So why is that a diminished triad? Well, in B major, we would have B, D sharp, and F sharp. But because we've lowered the third to a D natural, and we've lowered the F as well, the fifth, we've lowered that down, the F sharp down to an F in the key of C major. What we've got now is a diminished triad because of that flat 3 and flat 5. So this is the basics of figuring when it comes to triads in 4-part harmony. You may have heard of the term primary triads. The primary triads are 1, 4, and 5 of a major key area. Again, I will be dealing with minor key areas later, so don't worry about that for now. This is an extra side note. If we put a little title above the more technical name for these chords, for chord 1, it's known as the tonic. All right. Let's move that up there. Chord 2 is known as the supertonic. Also just going to move that up there. Chord 3, known as the mediant. Chord 4, known as the subdominant. Why? Because it precedes the dominant chord. I'm going to pop that up there. Chord 5 is known as the dominant. Chord 6 is known as submediant. Sorry, my brain just fuzzled out there for a second. And chord 7 is known as the leading note. Why? Because it leads into the tonic. Alright, so those are the technical names. I'm not going to explain why they're all known as this, except for the leading note, of course, which I just did. But that'll take too much time, so that is just what they're known as. If you ever hear of what is, if you hear someone say the supertonic or the mediant, now you know. Okay, mediant is the third, supertonic is the second, etc., etc. Okay, so now that we understand basic triads, essentially what 4-part harmony really is taking your 3-note chords, your triads, and building 4-note chords based on those triads. So in today's world, we see a lot of extended harmony in jazz. There's a lot of, rule breaking that goes on. But I have a sort of theory that in order to break the rules, you got to learn the rules first. So when it comes to writing 4-part voicings, there's a ton of rules. We're going to go through a couple of them now. Of course, these rules will be further elaborated on in further videos when we start dealing with cadences and things like that. But yeah, we've got an example of a voicing where you've got chord 1, still in C major, chord 1 going to chord 4, going to chord 5, and finally returning back to chord 1. This is how it sounds. Okay, very basic, very simple, very pretty. Alright, so the first rule that you need to understand is doubling of notes. Alright, when we take a 3-note triad and we turn it into a 4-note chord, there's one note that has to be doubled in order to create a 4-note voicing. So, when we're dealing with primary triads, which is what we're going to be doing first, 1, 4, 5, The doubling notes in this case is always going to be the root. So we're also in root position. Our first chord here, C, E, G, and then the top note is C. We've doubled our root notes here. In this case, that is C, E, G. So something that I do strongly suggest you guys do is make sure that you always put your working at the bottom below the figuring, just so you understand what notes build up that triad. So chord 1 being C, E, G, we're starting on our root C, because we're in root position. We've got our E over there, we've got a G there, and we've got a C at the top. Now, of course, I'm going to show you guys how to write these chords out eventually. This is just an example to explain what notes are doubled. If we look at chord 4, in this case it's FAC. We're starting on our root, F, in this case, on chord 4. We've got an A at the top here in the tenor part. We've got another F in the alto part. And we've got a C at the top. So what note has been doubled in this case? Well, it's the F. It's still the root. Chord 5, can you guess what note has been doubled? Clearly the G. Now in this case we're using whole notes here, so the bass and tenor have shared that G. We're starting on the G. The tenor is also holding the G, so the G has been doubled. We've got a D in the alto part, and in the soprano part at the top, we have got a D. And finally, the last chord being 1, D, E, G again. C is our root. G is in our tenor part, E is in our alto part, and C has been doubled at the top in the soprano part. So that is a basic example of what doubling looks like when it comes to 4-part harmony with primary chords in root position. Okay, so the second rule that we need to understand when it comes to 4-part harmony is the position of the particular chords that you are trying to write. So in harmony we have two positions. One is known as closed position and the other is extended or open position. These positions are based on the upper 3 voices of the given chord. So, in other words, that is excluding the bass note. It's just dealing with the tenor, alto, and soprano. So if we look at this first bar over here, we have got a closed voicing, and that is obvious to us based on the simple grouping of the top 3 notes. As we can see, we have got a C at the bottom in the bass, but we forget about the bass for now. We go to the tenor, we've got a middle C, the alto is E, and the soprano is G. Now, why is this known as closed position? Because between the top 3 notes, you can't find another note from the same triad. Okay, so between middle C and E, we can find a D sharp, or an E flat, but none of those notes belong to this triad. Between the E and G, we could find an F. That doesn't belong to the triad either. Same with this second chord here in the closed position bar. We've got a C in the bass. Again, forget about the bass. Look at the E. Between E and G, between the tenor and alto, we find an F, but that doesn't belong to the triad. And between the top 2 notes, the alto and the soprano, the alto is G in this case, and the soprano is C. And between those 2 notes, we can find an A and a B, but none of those belong to C, E, G. So that is why it is known as closed position. Your groupings are tightly knit together. If we move over to the third bar, we now find ourselves looking at an extended / open position chord. If we look at the first chord, again, forget about your bass notes. Look at your tenor. Tenor is a G in the bass clef. Your alto is E, and your C is in the soprano at the top. Now, between those 3 notes, we can find notes belonging to C, E, G. So between G and E, well, we can find basically middle C would fit perfectly there. And between the alto and the soprano, we can find G, which belongs to C major's tonic chord. If we look at the second chord, your tenor has got middle C, alto's got a G, and your soprano has an E. Between the tenor and the alto, we could find an E, which belongs to C, E, G, the major triad. And if we look between alto and soprano, G to E, we could find a C at the top here, which also fits perfectly between the alto and soprano. So that is why those chords are known as extended or slash open, because you could find other notes belonging to that triad in between the top three voicings. And obviously for closed, it's the opposite effect. You don't find any between the top three voicings. Our second last fundamental rule for four-part harmony, which I'll be showing you now, has got to do with the compass or the range for each voice found within the four-part chord. So if we look over here, we've got our bass, tenor, and alto and soprano spaced out separately in each individual bar. What we need to do now is we need to determine exactly how far up the stave the bass note can be and how low it can be, and the exact same thing for tenor, alto, soprano. In other words, when you're writing four-part harmony, and say now you're writing in a particular arrangement for a choir or even a group of instruments, you want to make sure that you stay within their comfortable singing or playing range. So there are obviously exceptions to this rule, but this is a basic guideline of what you can expect to write for various people so that they don't get angry with you when they're trying to rehearse your music. So for the bass note, ideally your lowest note is going to be an F right over there, and your highest note for bass would be middle C. Yeah, you don't really want to move lower than the F. I mean, for example, on the tenor trombone, it can go down to an E, so there's an exception to that rule. But if you stay within these parameters, you'll be safe on your exam or anything like that. So that is bass, a low F to middle C. For tenor, we've got our C all the way up to a G above middle C. For our alto part, we can find ourselves writing a G. That G would be over here in the bass clef, all the way up to a C in the treble clef stave, and in the soprano part, things get a little high. Middle C being our lowest note, all the way up to a G. So essentially, you want to stay within these parameters. Try and not go above them for each individual part. You may lose marks depending on your marker if you are writing for a particular exam. But if you stay within these guidelines right over here, you're going to be just fine. In my experience, some examiners, they are quite lenient with this rule, but just stay safe, rather safe than sorry, I always say. Alright, and the final rule for part 1 of this video series has got to do with spacing. Spacing of the voice parts is extremely important as it ensures good blend of sound as well as quality of sound. If we look at the first chord over here in bar 1, you'll notice that between voices alto and soprano, there's quite a large distance between those two notes. If we look at this chord here, strategically placed in bar 3, we'll notice that between voices tenor and alto, there is a massive distance between those two voices. This is what it sounds like as a result of those incredible spaces. As a result of this particular example, you'll notice that there is too great a distance between alto and soprano. In other words, what's happening is that we're getting too much of a bottom end sound and not enough of the top. And in this chord over here, we're getting too much of a, top and bottom sound, but with no sort of in-between middle range sound. So as a result of that, the blend between those two chords is extremely distant and, simply not good at all. How could we fix this? Well, we could simply try and ensure some better spacing. So we've got C at the bottom. Now, granted, again, I will be showing you guys how to do this in the future. But just for some better spacing, let's change it around. Move that up to a G. And we can move that up to an E. And now we've got a nice open position chord, C, G, E, and C at the top. So, what does this mean in terms of spacing? Well, this comes to another rule that we'll cover later on when we deal with cadences, but that rule has got to do with, well, simply keeping your top three voices not further than an octave apart from one another. So between tenor and alto, G to E, that is less than an octave. That is a sixth apart. And between alto and soprano, that is also less than an octave. Also, in this case, a sixth apart. So for our second chord over here, we could change this around by, well, simply taking this tenor part, making it a C, and bringing this guy, this alto part right here, down to a G. Now we've got a better blend between the tenor, alto, and soprano voice parts. So if we have a listen to that, suddenly it sounds really good. In this case over here, we've got an octave between the bass and tenor, and we also have an octave between the alto and soprano. Also not ideal, but it's a better way of voicing that chord, potentially fixing it without changing your soprano note. That is it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope that my tips and tricks have helped you understand the basic rules of primary chords and root position. And yeah, if you have any comments for me, any things that you would like me to cover in future videos, maybe just comments on the actual content itself. Do you like the structure of the video? I hope I'm clear enough that you are able to understand me okay. But yeah, anything down in the comments below, please. We love to hear back from you guys. Also consider liking, subscribing, dislike the video maybe. That's also cool. I like dislikes. But yeah, over here I've just put up a quick example of what we're going to cover in the next episode. Cadences in major keys, writing cadences in 4-part harmony. In this case, we've got two imperfect cadences, 4 to 5 and 1 to 5. We're going to learn how to write perfect cadences, imperfect cadences, interrupted cadences, and a plagal cadence, all in major keys. We will be dealing with minor keys in later episodes, but that is going to be further down the line. Yeah, you can also catch me over on Twitch every Tuesday and Thursday, South African Standard Time from about 7 o'clock. Link will be in the description below. If you want to come and ask me any questions live on stream, please feel free to do that. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.